Hey everybody, it's Chase with AV Pop Culture again, and today we are going over 25 for 25. This is 25 4K films that I highly recommend anyone add to their collection. So pop that tape in, I got you, let's go do this. All right, so 25 for 25. This is 25 movies that I feel like will add a lot of depth and texture and variation of just really good movies to anyone's 4K collection. Doesn't matter if you're a seasoned collector, a new collector, casual movie fan that just wants some good movies. There is something here for everyone, no matter what your taste is. Some of these are recent releases. Some of these have been out for a while. Some of these are classics. Some of these are off the beaten path. There's a little bit here for everyone. And if you want to start to curate a collection and kind of push your boundaries, whether you like horror, comedy, drama, classics, whatever it is, there's something here for everyone. We're going to just jump right into it. And we're going to start out with one of those classics. This is like a foundational horror film. Now, this is different from staples. I did a whole video of what I consider foundational movies. This is very different from that. This is to start to really curate and diversify a collection. So we're going to start with the Criterion Collection's release of Night of the Living Dead. The George A. Romero classic, the one that kind of started all the zombie craze. Beautifully presented in 4K, black and white here. It has a Blu-ray with it as well, as all the Criterion 4Ks do. But this is a very good movie, a shocking ending to this movie. It's one of the 25 greatest kills in horror history as far as I'm concerned. I did a video on that. But a very, very well done movie that kind of started the modern zombie movies as we know it. So Night of the Living Dead by the Criterion Collection, a nice and important film to add to anyone's collection. Next up on the list, shifts tones very hard. To me, this is one of the top just like quintessential comedies of all time. An iconic 80s comedy with one of the biggest comedic actors, most famous actors of all time. And I am talking about Coming to America. Now, this 4K is still very easy to get. It's a studio release. It looks great. This movie is so much fun. You talk about quintessential Eddie Murphy, quintessential 80s, and a comedy that just still holds up today and has so much fun. Of course, you have Eddie Murphy in Arsenio Hall. Eddie Murphy comes to America. He is the Prince of Zamunda, and he comes to America. His father, played by James Earl Jones, thinks, to sow his royal oats, and he takes Arsenio Hall along with him. Now, this is one of those where Eddie Murphy famously plays a bunch of different roles. These may be the most iconic ever with the barbershop guys and Randy Watson, but it is a sexual chocolate. This movie is infinitely quotable, so much fun. McDowell's, you got John Amos in here, and James Earl Jones, just his presence in any movie. This movie is so much fun. It is a must-own and definitely one to add to your 4K comedy collection. Now, another one is one that I grew up with. It became sort of synonymous with the 80s in so many ways because it has so many iconic people working on it, from Steven Spielberg to Chris Columbus to Richard Donner. I am talking about the Goonies. They reissued this 4K steelbook. If you're going to get this movie, you need to get the 4K. It really does look good. I really liked this steelbook, though I have several copies of this movie. Now, if you were a kid in the 80s and you were the right age, this one's going to hit you harder. But it's just one of those films that is so pop culturally relevant and has so many iconic people working on it. I mean, that's three big powers coming together, and you can see them all in the movie, their influence. The Goonies is like an Indiana Jones dark mystery for kids. Just an absolute adventure ride that you really feel the Spielberg in it in certain parts, and just a whole lot of fun. One of those movies that you just kind of want to own as part of a collection. So The Goonies comes in at number 23 on the list. Now, at number 22 on the list is one that sort of, yes, there was Reservoir Dogs, but for a lot of people, Pulp Fiction put Tarantino on the map in a big way. Of course, this has just a loaded cast from Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta to Uma Thurman to Bruce Willis, Ving Rhames. I mean, the cast goes on and on. Christopher Walken, Amanda Plummer, Tim Roth, Harvey Keitel. This movie was shot out of order. At that time, that wasn't like a common thing to do. So it kind of starts at the end, circles back around, goes through, and you see how all of the different stories add together. It's kind of an anthology story. Sizzling dialogue. This is the movie, between this and Reservoir Dogs, this is the movie that made Tarantino fall in love with his own dialogue. And a lot of people I love Tarantino's dialogue. He does get a little heavy with it, but this movie is sort of just iconic. The 4K has a few different releases. I have the standard here, but that is fine if you are building out and diversifying a collection. You have to have some Tarantino in there in a couple of places. And Pulp Fiction, while maybe not my favorite movie of his, is absolutely up there in the sort of groundbreaking level and is very, very identifiable. One that is safely part of any good collection. All right, and jumping over to horror here, this 4K is excellent, and I think if you are a Friday the 13th fan, or you are someone who has never seen a Friday the 13th movie and you want a Cliff Notes version of all the Friday the 13th stuff put into one movie, you get Friday the 13th, 2009. Now, for seasoned Friday the 13th fans, this serves as almost a direct sequel to the first two films, maybe the first three, but other people thought it was a reboot. It really doesn't feel as a reboot to me, because in the first part of the film, they talk about the lore of Jason. Basically, they talk about the first two movies. So it feels like a third film. And you don't need to have known anything about Friday the 13th to watch this, because they're going to recap and set all of that up in the first 15 minutes of the movie. And really, the first 20 minutes of the movie are a self-contained Friday the 13th movie all in one. But if you want a little bit of flavor of everything that Friday the 13th has to offer, you have Jason finding his hockey mask. You see Jason's mother. You get the backstory of what launched him. You get all of the looks around Camp Crystal Lake, how he navigates around, his transfer from human to more of a supernatural being. Of course, you have your nudity, your boobs, your kills, all of that stuff that you find in a slasher. This is literally the Cliff Notes version. It's a great place to start, and an excellent 4K. Actually, my favorite Friday the 13th film is Friday the 13th, 2009. It comes in at number 21 on our list. Now, at number 20 on our list is a Western, but not everyone grew up with Westerns. Not everyone loves Westerns. And, like, I grew up with older Westerns, but this particular movie definitely was a Western for kids my age, for people my age growing up in the 80s. So maybe if you want to tiptoe into Westerns with a more modern but still older school approach, but with actors that you recognize and a great 4K, you start with Young Guns. Now, a lot of people complain that they don't think this is really a Western. It is 100% a Western. You just have some of the Brat Pack in here. You have Charlie Sheen, you have Emilio Estevez, you have Kiefer Sutherland, Lou Diamond Phillips, Casey Zemesco, Dermot Mulroney. You have Terry O'Quinn in this movie. You have Jack Palance in this movie. You have Terrence Stamp in this movie. It is a deep, deep cast. And it is a fun movie. Of course, Emilio Estevez plays Billy the Kid, and this follows the story of the Lincoln County Regulators, which is and the Lincoln County War, which is a real thing that happened with real characters portrayed here that participated in it. And it's done with reverence to old Westerns for sure, but also a little bit of that 80s style and flair. I love it. It's a good starting point if you like 80s movies and you want to get into Westerns, but you haven't really tiptoed in. So every collection needs some Westerns. Now, there are other Westerns that I absolutely love. You know, you could call Hateful Eight a Western. I love that movie. Winchester 73 with Jimmy Stewart. The Searchers with John Wayne. True Grit with John Wayne, and the remake of True Grit. Love all of those movies. Magnificent Seven, the original with Yul Brynner, the remake. Love those. But this one might tiptoe you in and get you a little piece of 80s iconic, films as well. So Young Guns comes in at number 20 on the list. At number 19 is an anthology that is kind of considered in some ways like the godfather of anthology movies. It is got a lot of horror royalty thrown at it with Stephen King, George Romero. It has a cult hit status here. I am talking about Creepshow. The most fun that you'll have being scared. Absolutely. You have Adrienne Barbeau in here. You have Ted Danson in here. You're going to see a lot of faces you recognize. You can still grab this 4K Steelbook pretty easy. This is a Shout Factory, Screen Factory release. You can get this through Walmart. You can probably get this on Amazon still. If you're going to have one horror anthology, now I'm a big horror anthology fan, so I recommend a couple of others. This is the one that a lot of people feel like the rest sort of stand on the shoulders of and move forward. I myself was inspired by this movie when I did my anthology Creature Feature, and blessed to have places like Dread Central, Fangoria compare my movie and say it's an homage to these type of films. That's the highest compliment that I can get. Creepshow, the most fun you'll have being scared. Not too hard, so if you're not a huge horror fan, you're still going to be okay with this. And if you are a huge horror fan, you want to add it to your collection. Definitely a lot of comedic moments in here too. So Creepshow comes in at number 19. At number 18 is one that's going to push your boundaries. You're going to need some stuff that push your boundaries just a little bit if you're trying to curate and expand a collection and expand your tastes and things like that. So we're going to go with the 88 Films release of From Beyond. This is a Stuart Gordon film based on H.P. Lovecraft's story. Stars Barbara Crampton and Jeffrey Combs and Ken Foray in here. And this is a very kind of, hot, sexually driven H.P. Lovecraft story. You have Barbara Crampton in her beautiful outfit, sexy outfit here. And the story is about a scientist, kind of mad scientist style. He develops a resonator, which allows us to see into the other dimensions that are right beside us, existing right beside us all the time. We just can't see them. This stimulates the pineal gland, which also stimulates, sexual urges and things like that. So it allows us to see in these other dimensions and those things to see us, but it also does some other things to us. And this movie has The Thing level practical effects, just absolutely great practical effects, and one of the most beautiful 4Ks that you're ever going to see. The art here on the 88 Films release is great. I highly recommend this one to kind of push you outside your comfort zone and kind of get you tiptoeing into a little bit of H.P. Lovecraft. From Beyond has to make the list at number 18. Now for campy 80s horror fans that really love the zombie genre, but love that 80s punk rock comedy, just absolute fun, you got to have Return of the Living Dead. Especially this year would be a good time to pick this one up because they are doing a direct sequel to this, Return of the Living Dead 2025, that is going to be set 18 months after this movie takes place. And it's going to be a Christmas time sort of horror movie. And this is sort of about, things that we can identify with now. The trioxin, which is a military compound. It is released into the air and it basically brings dead people back to life and, send more zombies, because Return of the Living Dead is a rocking good time. Sexy, has Linnea Quigley doing her famous striptease dance. You have the punk rock 80s vibes. You have just outstanding practical effects. This movie is all about it. It is almost like a time capsule in and of itself. Return of the Living Dead, grab it this year if you don't have it, because they're going to make the sequel. Should be a whole lot of fun. Return of the Living Dead, got to have that one in the collection. Another one is a recent release, coming in at number 16 on the list, is one of my favorite Sylvester Stallone movies ever, and this really is a really good 4K here, Demolition Man. I threw this thing on the OLED that I just got, and I'm going to talk about that in another video, and this thing is just, it does look really, really good. But the movie itself is so poignant for today. Like some of the things that they did in this movie that were supposed to be futuristic spoofs, some people have wanted to come to fruition, and some things have come to fruition in so many ways. But especially the way we're kind of like, spied upon. But still haven't explained the 3 seashells, but this is a fun sci-fi action comedy adventure. Great villain in here played by Wesley Snipes, and just Stallone doing his thing. Sandra Bullock is beautiful in this and a whole lot of fun. Dennis Leary in here being himself. You have a lot of good things going on with this movie. It's just infinitely rewatchable. Demolition Man, I would grab it. There's an Arrow 50% off sale going on right now as I record this at Barnes & Noble. Good time to pick it up. Limited edition set. Demolition Man, a must. Now, number 15, I'm really ready to push your boundaries because this one, I recommend this one a lot because this one was recommended to me. It was a blind buy. It was a gift, not a blind buy because it was a gift, but it was a blind watch. It pushed my boundaries and opened me up to a filmmaker who I think I actually have a lot of things in common with in the way I think, maybe not the way that I make films or write films, but in the way that we think about them. 100%. I am talking about David Lynch's Blue Velvet. This movie has like the seedy suburban underbelly. It is very trippy. That is one way to say it, but just beautifully shot, very surreal. And you have to be in the right mindset for David Lynch and his movies, but they can open you up to just thought because he doesn't give you a lot of answers. He wants you to glean things for yourself based off of the movie that he's showing you. That's why he usually doesn't ever explain anything in any interviews, because he wants a million people to watch it and get a million different takeaways from it. That's what he wants. And you have a nice 4K Blu-ray combo released this year from Criterion. Just an absolutely beautifully shot film, and one that will really, really push your boundaries, but an absolute classic that will help diversify any collection, help you curate a nice, well-rounded collection, and push your boundaries and maybe open you to some new cinema. So Blue Velvet comes in at number 15. Now, shifting hard from that is another very iconic comedy that got a release this year on 4K that kind of no one was expecting, and not expecting to be this good and this well put out. And I'm talking about 88 Films' release of American Pie. Now, this is one, if you follow me, this one is important to me because, first of all, I had just graduated high school when this came out, so I was like the perfect age for this. And it is like a throwback to the 80s style sex comedies, those type of fun romps there, sort of Porky's style movies. But then I ended up later working on American Reunion for like 17 days. I had a line in a scene. It got cut, but I got paid for it, so that counts. But I also met a lot of connections to help me make my movies independently, and made friends on that set, and just an amazing experience. But that all started back with American Pie. So to see it get this kind of love with this big set, this big release, this 4K restoration by 88 Films, absolutely love that. And I think it's one of those that is become part of the American culture, American tapestry. So if you're going to have some comedies that mark different time periods, I think American Pie is an important piece of that. So grab your piece and add American Pie to your collection. Absolutely love it. Great job here by 88 Films. Comes in at number 14. Now, number 13 is one that I have been banging the drum on as well here lately, because it was a blind buy for me this year as I was going into my Brian De Palma deep dive. And again, that's what part of this list is about, to expand beyond your comfort zone into other movies that people like myself give high recommendations for, that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have watched, and you go your whole life not even knowing what you're missing. That is the case with Brian De Palma's Body Double. Just an excellent film. Stars Craig Westman. Am I saying his name right? But he is known for the Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warriors. But Melanie Griffith steals the show here. Between her and Brian De Palma's style and filmmaking, that's the story. Of course, you have Melanie Griffith, who plays an adult film actress in this movie. She gets spied on, very Rear Window style, from the lead actor. As he's watching her, he's falling in love with her. She, from a distance, basically is becoming infatuated with her, but she's really impersonating someone else, and that is all part of a big murder, crime, backstory, mystery. This is very Hitchcock. This is almost De Palma's ode to Hitchcock. The way he films it, I've said it before, Dutch angles, that's tilted camera, spinning camera, dolly zoom, where it pushes in on the person's face while pulling away in the background. Very Hitchcock. With this story, it's very Hitchcock whodunit. And of course, I mean, the whole voyeuristic thing of him watching from a distance through blinds and looking through his telescope. It's very, very Rear Window, De Palma style, all in this. His, sexiness that he kind of dumps into each movie. Melanie Griffith, though, she delivers all of this scintillating, scenery with such grace and charm that you kind of forget about it, and everything feels earned in the movie. The more I watch it, the more I love it. Body Double, I highly recommend. Comes in at number 13. Now at number 12, this may be my favorite Tarantino movie. I go back and forth. I promise, a lot of you guys keep asking me to rank the Tarantino films. I'm going to get around to it. It's hard. It's intense. It requires me to fight with myself. But this one had to be on the list because I don't know if it's his best. I don't know if it's my favorite, but I absolutely love this film. It's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now, I am a sucker for the old Hollywood vibes, just for that whole like filmmaking, the Hollywood feeling, the old school golden age of Hollywood, where it was about filmmaking and you just all of the scenery, the things that you associate with seeing Hollywood and that you think of with Hollywood and old school movie stars. That is somehow captured in this movie, even though it's set a little bit after that time period. Just absolutely love it. They phenomenal performances here by Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, and of course, Margot Robbie playing Sharon Tate. You get a little bit of wish fulfillment with this, a little bit of revisionist history that I'm okay with, because it's not revisionist history to change things in a cold way. It's revisionist history because you wish something had happened differently, and you know, that kind of thing. So I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen it, but just a film that just kind of captures the overall feeling, the mood, the atmosphere of Hollywood and filmmaking. So I love Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think this poster is incredible. It's a nice looking 4K, one of my favorite Tarantino films. It comes in at number 12. Now at number 11 is a Tony Scott film. You want to talk about style? Tony Scott has style. And a lot of people forget that all of his style was dumped into this movie very early on in his career. I am talking about the original Top Gun. This is a great looking 4K and a movie that you absolutely must own. You've got Tom Cruise in here, Anthony Edwards. You even get Meg Ryan in this movie, Kelly McGillis. It's one of those that it might be quintessential 80s, but to me, it's also quintessential Tony Scott. And of course, you have the Kenny Loggins soundtrack that is absolutely, and I know people complain if I use this word too much, but iconic. Some things are icons. When you're talking about movies that are iconic, that's just the word. It might not be a groundbreaking or historical or any other synonym like that you might want to use. It's iconic. Danger Zone is iconic. Top Gun is an iconic Tom Cruise film, period. And it is one that belongs in anyone's collection. Part 2, Maverick, is great also. Highly recommend. If you don't have any of them and you're trying to add some Tony Scott to your collection, while I also absolutely love Days of Thunder, that's a high recommend. It's not on the iconic level of Top Gun, so I would recommend that you start there. If you don't have this one, Top Gun is a must-own for any collection. We have now reached our top 10, and this is a very recent release, and you know what it is? It's iconic, too. You know, sometimes things just are. And you really cannot argue that when you talk about the Terminator. Now, this is a pretty bare-bones release, but the 4K is extremely well done, despite what any pixel peepers or Cameron haters want to say. There are people that are just going to hate on anything that's associated with James Cameron because he's offended them and he doesn't give a shit. But he is a master filmmaker. He just is. This movie looks great on the 4K. This is Arnold classic. This really sprung him between this and Conan, launched him to superstardom. Now, I wish this had more features with it. I wish, because this was done by a studio, they have infinite money and access and resources to do features. It would not have hurt them in any way, shape, or form. I do really like this steelbook a lot, but Terminator, it's kind of a must for any collection. And Arnold and James Cameron's first time working together, you need to have that piece of history. So the Terminator cracks our top 10. It is not higher because it's limited. It doesn't even, in the States, it doesn't even come with the Blu-ray. So it's a little bit limited because of that, but a must for your collection. Now, at number 9 is a classic film. This is one of my top 25 favorite all-time films. Matter of fact, some of these are on that list. But this one, I think, is perfect filmmaking, even though Frank Capra, who made the film, didn't really think so. I am talking about It's a Wonderful Life. Just the absolute classic. The whole meaning of life. This movie has been emulated so many times. This story told in so many different ways. It started right here. James Stewart, who's one of my favorite actors of all time. Donna Reed. This movie is absolutely Frank Capra, up, top, back, forward, sideways, and it captures so much heartfelt feeling of what it really means to be a human on this planet, leaving your mark in a good way, and what life is all about. And the filmmaking here is just absolutely superb. I mean, when you watch it back, there are some things they were limited by budget, maybe at the beginning when they're portraying the angels in heaven talking, or you can see like bad cuts. That's just the way they used to cut film. So try that, but it is, none of that takes away from the movie at all. The 4K here Black and white always looks great in high dynamic range. Cannot recommend It's a Wonderful Life enough. It may take you more than one viewing to get through this, to really get this movie. This is one of those movies, the more you watch it, the more you embrace it, and you let that settle in on your heart and mind. It's a must for any collection. It's a Wonderful Life comes in at number 9. Now, kind of shifting gears from that kind of feel-good thing to one of the quintessential haunted house movies of all time, Tobe Hooper with Spielberg pulling the strings over top. I'm talking Poltergeist. When you talk about part of the public zeitgeist, they're here in Caroline. Like most people have heard that, especially they're here. This, of course, is about a family who moves into a house that turns out to be haunted with a poltergeist because of a bad real estate development company that didn't move the bodies along with the headstones when they built over a cemetery. And the house has basically come alive and targets the girl as that source of life that they are missing. And Poltergeist is definitely a Tobe Hooper directed film, but you can feel Spielberg all over this movie. He was on set every day. He really wanted to make it himself. It doesn't matter. It's one of those movies that should be part of every collection, in my opinion. If you don't have this 4K is one of those that they say is reference quality. It is that good of a 4K. Poltergeist is just a must own. And in 2025, if you're out here looking for things to vary your collection through with great filmmakers, iconic movies, great actors, great 4Ks, all of that stuff, this is one that kind of checks all those boxes. So Poltergeist comes in on our list at number 8. Now at number 7, I am going back to the comedies, and this one may be my favorite comedy of all time. It might be. Like I would have to sit down and really think about it, but it is very hard to beat the talent, the story, the filmmaking here. Even if you don't like John Landis, you have to love Trading Places. This is young Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd. You have Jamie Lee Curtis in here, who breaks up into this point with this movie. Jamie Lee Curtis had been the, virginal, innocent, final girl in horror movies, kind of a scream queen, and she had done that by, not breaking any of those horror movie rules. But in here, she actually plays a prostitute, an escort, and she is in a thong. She goes topless for the first time in her career in this movie. She's absolutely stunning in this movie. But this is one that has a great story to it. Eddie Murphy is like a small-time hustler, semi-homeless. Dan Aykroyd is that 80s upper crust yuppie Wall Street guy who works for Randolph and Mortimer Duke, played by Don Acme and Ralph Bellamy. Did I say their names right? I always mess up. Don Amici, isn't it? Amici. And Ralph Bellamy. They play Randolph and Mortimer Duke, who make a bet that they can turn Eddie Murphy into a rich and successful protege while putting Dan Aykroyd in the poorhouse and making him turn to a life of crime. It is a fun ride, a kind of switching places type thing. So much fun. The 4K brings this thing back to life in a way I haven't seen in a long time because I only had an old DVD and a VHS. And I highly recommend it. You're going to get Denholm Elliott in this movie. You're going to see some other familiar faces along this ride, and you are absolutely going to stand and cheer for these people by the end of this movie. There's also a little fun connection because Randolph and Mortimer Duke appear as homeless guys in the earlier film, Coming to America. So you got to have them together. Trading Places, one of my favorite all-time comedies. It was the Dukes. You got to pick this one up. Now, next up is a fun suburban horror that just drips 80s and pays homage to great Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing Hammer films. you have to have this one in your collection if you have any interest in horror. If you have any interest in diversifying your collection, you have to add Fright Night. This movie, Chris Sarandon plays Jerry Dandridge. A vampire literally moves in next door. This is another 4K. This one's out by Sony. It is really, really top-notch 4K. This is an aftermarket slip I got from Blockbuster Box Sets that he brought back shortly, so go check it out. But this one, man, this one's so much fun. This movie scared the living daylights out of me as a kid when it came out, and I first saw it at the theater and then rented it. It wasn't actually the movie, because the movie is kind of fun, comedic, campy horror with some scares. But it was actually this image here. This image scared the bejesus out of me as a kid. She looked terrifying. In the movie, it's got those great practical effects, the over-the-top, oh, the vampires are coming, type feel to it, but it's all set in suburbia. There's nothing that you would want to change about this film. So when you get a film that is that high a quality and in a 4K that's that good, a steelbook, I have to recommend it. And even if you don't like horror movies, it's a fun ride. So Fright Night comes in on our list at number 6. Now at number 5 on the list, we're in the top 5 here. This is what I consider the greatest horror anthology of all time. So if you're into horror, or you want to start bridging into horror, and you want to do it with more familiar faces and in small bites, so if there's spots that you don't like, you can skip by them. Horror anthologies are good for that. And if you like something that gives you all those Halloween feels and atmosphere, I have to always recommend Trick or Treat. This is a recent release in 4K by Arrow that I also have to recommend because it is one of the best looking 4Ks I have ever seen in my life. The color is so powerful in this, particularly the oranges and the reds, that it cracked out my old QLED TV. It caused what's called clipping. It just couldn't handle it. This thing is also loaded with tons of special features. So if you want to dive into the making of horror films, see how stuff is done, but you're going to have recognizable faces in here like Anna Paquin from True Blood and X-Men and, countless other films. You're going to get her. You're going to get Leslie Bibb. You're going to get a lot of people that you recognize and you've seen before. That can sometimes make horror more palatable. And again, if you're tiptoeing in, you can skip through segments in an anthology that don't fit your taste or that you're too squeamish for or you don't like. This one's told somewhat non-sequentially, kind of like Pulp Fiction. And I absolutely love it. It's a bunch of interconnected stories that take place on this Halloween night. There's a little something for everyone. And, of course, it has all those Halloween vibes. I've been told that I say that too much. But sometimes there's a limited amount of synonyms that apply when you're talking about the feeling that a movie projects onto you. So Trick or Treat has all of that Halloween imagery. It has the Halloween feels. And it is just a fun horror movie for you to start with. One of these that you can start into if you're not a big horror fan. And if you are a big horror fan, it has everything you want. And it is one of the best 4Ks I have ever seen, regardless of genre or who put it out. So Trick or Treat comes in at number 5. Now at number 4 on the list, I understand this is sliding a little horror heavy as I realize there's maybe like 7 or 8 on this list. But when you're talking about all-time famous, iconic films, you have to talk Nightmare on Elm Street. This is a recent release, and it's a good place to start because it looks like we might be getting all of these on 4K. So if this is something that pushes your boundaries and you're getting into and you decide maybe I would like to buy more, this is going to be a good time because it looks like we're going to get all the 4Ks. And if you're a huge fan, you got to have this to start with. This is a excellent 4K, the Wes Craven film that sort of launched 1,000, it seems like, sequels, and Freddy Krueger has become part of our cultural fabric. You have to have this movie. Maybe it's not quite the staple of Halloween for a lot of people because it ups the gore. So Halloween is more on my all-time staples list, whereas this one is on one that needs to be in a good, well-rounded collection for anybody at any level. I highly recommend Freddy, wisecracking and very scary, just absolutely unique creation by Wes Craven, and a great 4K, and a little more scary when you realize that the foundations of this story are based on true events. So, Nightmare on Elm Street, pick it up. Now we have just a few more. At number 3 is another James Cameron film. Now I have the first film on my staples, but the second film is one that you need to complete this. And sometimes I think this one is my favorite of the first two. I'm talking about Aliens. This is a nice looking 4K. Again, people want to complain about it. There is nothing to complain about. This is a good looking 4K here. But the movie is absolutely excellent. And I apologize, you guys, my camera's wanting to go crazy. The movie is excellent. You need to pick this one up. It is another one. I mean, Sigourney Weaver's Ripley is a all-time badass woman character in a film. Who cares if she's a woman? She's just a badass character. And that's what you want. Ripley is iconic. Okay. And so is the Alien movies, especially the first two. It launched a franchise that's still going today. You want to go back to where it starts. You grab Alien as a staple. You grab Aliens to well-round that collection and start there. You got to have James Cameron's classic Aliens. I got 2 left, and I have one that encapsulates all of 80s, the 1980s. It's a time capsule for the 80s, and it is also a great horror film. I'm talking about Schumacher's The Lost Boys. This, I say it's a time capsule for the 80s because the hair, the music, the vibes, the look of the film, and then you have Corey Haim and Corey Feldman. You have this reissued 4K steelbook. Now, the high dynamic range, the colors in this absolutely pop. Everything about this screams 80s. It screams good vampire horror fun. It can push your boundaries. It can make you laugh. Of course, it has the 2 Coreys. That checks all your 80s boxes. But it also has Jason Patric and Kiefer Sutherland in this movie. Also both very big in the 80s. This is just quintessential 80s horror, 80s feels, 80s atmosphere. It has it all here. The Lost Boys is one that I highly recommend if you've seen it a million times or if you've never seen it. It is one that I can safely suggest you add to your collection. And that just leaves number 1, and maybe, I am a huge Arnold Schwarzenegger fan, but this may legitimately be the best 4K ever released. It's between this and Trick or Treat and just a few others that are in contention for that, but I am talking about Conan the Barbarian. This is sword and sorcery at its finest, done by John Milius. This launched Arnold Schwarzenegger. This launched him into Terminator. And then from there, the sky is the limit. He's absolutely a legend. This 4K is immaculate, and it is loaded with some of the most features maybe I've ever seen on a release. And this is a glorious sword and sandal and sorcery epic, but very R-rated because you have John Milius in here. It's based off a comic book. Everything about this, you have James Earl Jones in here as well. This movie is thief, warrior, gladiator, king, Conan. What is best in life? To destroy your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of the women. This movie, you can see I have Conan figure back here. This movie is So much fun. If you like fantasy, if you like Arnold, if you like great filmmaking, beautiful scenery on a 4K, if you like a little bit of mystery, magic, all of that, it's all here, wrapped up with the most special features and one of the best 4Ks I've ever encountered. Conan is one that can push you. If you don't like those things, you can see some early Arnold and move forward with his career. Check out some John Milius. It checks a lot of boxes. I think it's one that you definitely need to add. You can still get the standard version. The limited edition, you'd have to go to eBay aftermarket for, but the standard version is still readily available, and I highly recommend that you grab it. And that is my list of 25 films on 4K for 2025 to aim at targeting. These would be Chase's targets if I didn't have them to kind of, diversify and round out and curate a good collection of great 4Ks and excellent movies. But let me know some others that you have on your list. Remember, I did a separate list of staples. That's where you'll find things like Jaws, Indiana Jones, Star Wars. I keep a running list of Chase's all-time targets that are staples for any collection. Links to Amazon where you can find that, all that stuff. And let me know what you think of this list. What are some others that you're targeting this year? If you enjoyed this, we do all kinds of things here. 4K reviews, physical media news, lists, rankings, all that kind of stuff from a fan and filmmaker's perspective. If that sounds like your jam, you can really help the channel by liking, subscribing, sharing, ringing that bell. It really does help me out. If you want to help support the channel, you can use those links like I was talking about for Amazon to purchase these. Anything you grab when you use those links on Amazon helps out the channel. And you can join the channel. You can become a channel member below at my Patreon link or right here on YouTube. Couple dollars a month depending on your tier. You're going to get your name and lights on every single video. You're going to get special behind the scenes looks at my filmmaking because I'm a filmmaker, and special members only videos and little glimpses into my crazy world here and so much more. And it all helps out the channel and I appreciate it so much. But until next time, be kind, rewind like always. This is Chase with AV Pop Culture, and I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.
I know.